Hi everyone, today we are going to have a look at this classic mistake that states that the square root of x squared plus 9, for example, would be equal to x plus 3. And basically here what happened is that we took the square root of x squared to get x, and we took the square root of 9 to get 3. And this is absolutely wrong, and we are going to look at this video why it is so. Well, the reason for that is just that numbers do not work this way, and you cannot apply the square root to the sum of two numbers like this. Let's have a look at one example. If we want to work out the square root of 16 plus 9, this would be the square root of 25, because 16 plus 9 is 25, and that would be 5, because 5 times 5 is 25. Let's now have a look at the square root of 16 plus the square root of 9. The square root of 16 is 4, and the square root of 9 is 3. The sum of these two is 7. So you see that we find two different answers here, meaning that this square root is not equal to the sum of these two square roots. So this is something that we need to keep in mind, that the square root of the sum of two numbers a and b is not the square root of a plus the square root of b. This might be a little bit confusing, because actually we can split square roots like this, but this is when the product is involved. So if you just check that the square root of 4 times 9, this is the square root of 36, this is 6. And if you have a look at the square root of 4 that multiplies the square root of 9, you find that the square root of 4 is 2, that the square root of 9 is 3, and that 2 times 3 is 6. So you see here, this process is absolutely fine, where the first one was not. And we can say that the square root of 4 times 9 is the square root of 4 times the square root of 9. So we can actually write that the square root of a times b is the square root of a times the square root of b. Okay, so try to keep this in mind. We are not allowed to split a square root when there is a sum involved, or actually when there is also a difference involved. You cannot say that the square root of a minus b is the square root of a minus the square root of b. This is also wrong. We can do it when there is a product involved, when we have a times b, and we end up with the square root of a times the square root of b. Here, similarly, this would also work with the quotient. The square root of a over b is the square root of a over the square root of b. So splitting a square root like this is okay with a multiplication or a division, but it's not with an addition or a subtraction. Coming back to our first example right there, so we could add that the square root of 9x squared is the square root of 9 times the square root of x squared, so it would be a 3x if x is a positive number. Again, keep in mind that here a multiplication was involved, so that was okay to split the square root in two. Here it's an addition involved, so you cannot split the square root in two.